Welcome, Mandeep.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. All right. So last week we spoke about the radiology of bone tumors. That will give you a fair idea as to what you're looking at, whether you're looking at a benign tumor or a malignant tumors. But today we are going to talk about importance of biopsies and the important steps or the methodology of doing a biopsy, because uh, biopsy is the most important step in the management of bone and soft tissue tumors. It should be planned and executed as carefully as the final procedure or the management. So we'll start with a few interesting cases, which will just to emphasize the importance of biopsy. Okay, now this is a 12-year-old boy. He had swelling in the upper leg for 3 months. This was the X-ray and MRI pictures. You can clearly see a lytic sclerotic lesion in the upper end of tibia in the metaphyseal region. So last time we spoke about radiology. Okay, and considering this X-ray picture, all of us would think that this is just a little more aggressive, something more than a simple benign tumor. You can see a lytic sclerotic lesion with a malignant periosseal reaction with a little bit of soft tissue mass on the back in a 12-year-old boy in the metaphyseal area. So you would all think of osteosarcoma. As you can see on this MRI also, there are sclerotic bone forming areas. There is a periosseal reaction. There is a soft tissue mass. But unfortunately, the radiologist reported this as a chronic osteomyelitis. And surgeon, actually he saw, the radiologist even saw an abscess. What actually was a soft tissue mass was reported as an abscess. And that is where, as we say, your eyes will believe only what your brain knows. So exactly that's what happened. The surgeon believed this report. He did a debridement. He put in antibiotic beads and all these things, considering that this is osteomyelitis. He did the swelling kept on rising, increasing. He did another debridement after some time. And when the patient presented to us, this was the situation. So this was actually an osteosarcoma, which was missed. It was believed to be an osteomyelitis because just blindly following the radiology report. This is another case where there was a 19-year-old male who fell from a bike. He did give a history of mild pain in the thigh since last month or so, but after the fall, he sustained this pathological fracture. Surgeon actually thought this is a pathological fracture, as he could see this rarefied bone and some destructive lesion here. He got an MRI done. The MRI was reported as possibility of pathological fracture through a pre-existent simple bone cyst of femur. He believed this diagnosis. He did a nailing, interlocking nailing. He did send the rimming material for histopath, which was obviously negative for any tumor. And this was actually an osteosarcoma. So when the patient presented to us, he had a large anterior soft tissue mass. The destruction had progressed. And, this patient would have got a nice limb preservation surgery with just a, diaphyseal or metadiaphyseal resection, a joint sparing resection. On the contrary, he ended up having a total femur replacement because the nail contaminated the entire canal. Now, we also know from the evidence that when you do an oncologically unsound procedure on sarcomas, there is a very likelihood of tumor, showering in the system, and it does affect the prognosis negatively. Another case when a 38-year-old female presented with a knee pain, and the X-ray showed this kind of a lytic expansile lesion, pretty good looking lesion with a narrow zone of transition, lytic expansile in the epiphyseal joint subarticular area. So anybody would think of this to be a giant cell tumor. However, the MRI was showing a lot of concerning features which were ignored by the radiologist. He reported this as giant cell tumor. More likely than ABC, he didn't even think of sarcoma as one of the possibilities. And the curettage was done. The final histopathology report showed that this is sarcoma, high-grade osteosarcoma. This patient was treated later on, but unfortunately died because of multiple florid metastases in 1 year, 13 months time. This is another patient where this lesion was assumed to be a giant cell tumor. A curettage and bone grafting was done without a prior biopsy. And when the patient presented to her at 9 months, that it was quite pretty obvious that this was an osteosarcoma. And this procedure could have been avoided if a simple biopsy was done. Another patient, this same X-ray I showed during my last interaction with you. This was thought to be an ABC. Surgeon did curettage and G-bone implantation, but the swelling kept on rising. Rather than thinking of some other pathology, he thought there's probably an infection, so he removed the G-bone and put in a antibiotic beads. And this is how the patient presented to us. This was actually a telangiectatic variant of osteosarcoma. This is another case where a classically sarcoma-like lesion in the subcutaneous plane of lower leg was reported by radiology as a benign neurogenic tumor. Surgeon did a debulking surgery. It was a high-grade undifferentiated pleomorphic sarcoma, and this is how the patient presented to us when he came to me. Despite doing a great surgery on this particular patient, this patient just met me at 9 months after the surgery with multiple bilateral lung metastasis and also with a few bony metastasis. So such a small superficial lesion should have done very well otherwise, but we can only think that this oncologically unsound procedure has negatively affected his prognosis. So when you do these things, you would feel that probably you screwed this patient big time, but beware, this is an era where medical legal negligences are very, the patients don't shy away from going to consumer protection and medical legal aspects also we have to take care of these days. And that is where doing a simple biopsy will not cause any harm. So the moral of all these 4 or 5 stories which I shared was that we should control our surgical itch. We should work up these patients well before we do the final procedure. We should first achieve a proper diagnosis, and we should see our target very clearly, because only once we see our target, we can shoot the target well. So histopathological diagnosis is vital in workup of all the musculoskeletal neoplasia. So biopsy has been defined as James Ewing's from almost a century back as a procedure that yields adequate material in the least traumatic way without jeopardizing further definitive management. It's a very beautiful diagnosis. It sums up everything. So when you want to do a biopsy, you should know the rules of biopsy. And there are these very 5 famous W's associated with biopsy. So what are the famous 5 W's? When should the biopsy be done? Which lesions have to be biopsied? Who should do the biopsy? From where the biopsy should be taken? And how should we do the biopsy? The method of taking a biopsy. So let us take all these W's one by one. First question, when to do the biopsy? So it's very important to know that biopsy has to be undertaken after all the imaging studies have been completed. Meaning by, you should do the MRI or CT scan or whatever you want before you do the biopsy. Because once you do a biopsy and then send the patient for MRI, the tissue reaction to the biopsy procedure can alter the appearance on imaging. That is one thing. More importantly, imaging can identify the best area for biopsy. Let us take an example. Now, this is a very large destructive lesion in the proximal humerus. Of course, the first differential here is high-grade malignancy. If you see the MRI, there is a large area of necrosis inside. Okay, so this is the area where you will not find any viable cells. So if you end up taking a biopsy from this necrotic area, you are more likely to have a non-representative biopsy. So you have to take a biopsy from one of these solid areas. So this is how the MRI will guide you as to from where to take the biopsy. This is another patient where there is a large lipomatous lesion, very classical looking lipoma. But if you see in the center of that lesion, you see a different looking area, which raises a suspicion of a dedifferentiation. And it is important to know whether it's a simple lipoma or liposarcoma or a dedifferentiated liposarcoma, because the prognosis is very different and the treatment methods also change. And this is exactly what was done. This particular area was targeted through under the CT scan guidance, and it was actually a dedifferentiated liposarcoma. Coming to the second question, which lesion to biopsy? Do all lesions need a biopsy? Of course, last lecture, even earlier part of this particular lecture, I am re-emphasizing the fact that we should do a biopsy. We should do a biopsy. But there are particular 4 or 5 entities where the diagnosis can be convincingly made based on imaging. So what are those lesions? One is osteoid osteoma with a very characteristic benign clinico-radiological picture and a very classical history combined with that. You have a patient who is an adolescent. He has a nocturnal pain which is relieved by analgesics. You see a wasting of the extremity. You see a beautiful nidus on the CT scan, and you see a surrounding extensive edema on MRI. So you know that your diagnosis is osteoid. This lesion does not need a diagnostic biopsy. And even in today's era, we usually treat these lesions by radiofrequency ablation. So you really don't need any tissue diagnosis for this particular entity. But the caveat is that clinical radiological picture should match with each other. Another thing is fibrous dysplasia. You have this fibrous dysplasia where there is a ground glass appearance with this kind of a classical Shepherd-Cook deformities, all these things. So fibrous dysplasia can be safely treated without a biopsy. Third is osteochondroma. As you can see, these are very, very classical book picture-ish osteochondromas. But here, if you have any suspicion of, even a smallest suspicion of transformation into chondrosarcoma, as evident by, even a distant possibility of a soft tissue calcification or a little bit high thickness of a cartilage cap on MRI, you should do a biopsy even here. Fourth is a simple bone cyst, where you have this kind of a lytic lesion, punched out lesion in the center of the humerus or in the proximal femur in an adolescent or in the first 2 decades of the, and with this kind of a simple unilocular cavity filled with fluid without any fluid levels, you are reasonably certain that you are looking at a simple bone cyst. Here I would say that usually these days we treat simple bone cysts with intralesional injections like steroids or bone marrow or demineralized bone matrix. So when we inject that thing in the cavity, we usually take a biopsy all the time, and that is how we do get a biopsy in simple bone cyst. Now, if we have to do if you are planning any open surgery, which we don't do anyways these days, but if you're planning any open surgeries on these kind of things, you should still take a biopsy. And finally is lipomas. Very, very classical lipoma, where you can see on all the MRI images on T1, T2, stir, fat suppressed, all these images, you have classical fat signals in these kind of subcutaneous areas. You know that you are looking at a lipoma. And fifth is vascular neoplasm or hemangioma, where you have a classical cluster of grapes type of appearance, and it is clubbed with the clinical examination of wasting. You also have severe pain, history of severe pain, especially on pressing or tenderness rather than pain. But all the other benign aggressive lesions or all suspected malignant tumors must be biopsied before the final treatment is started. So the third question is, who should do the biopsy? Now, the surgeon who is going to do the final procedure ideally should do the biopsy. Why? Because the biopsy itself can be hazardous if it is not done properly. So today, the commonest indication for an amputation is a poorly performed biopsy. So we should be very, very aware of biopsy principles if you are planning to do a biopsy. Now, this is a paper of the legendary Mankin, Henry Mankin, where he has studied the hazards of biopsy, and he said the major error of diagnosis, complication rates, and unnecessary amputations are related to poorly performed biopsies. So this is the paper in 1996 where he said that errors, complications, and change in the course and outcome were almost 2 to 12 times greater when the biopsy was done in a referring center instead of the treatment center. In another paper from the same institute, Professor Mencken said that the society suggests that the biopsy should be planned as carefully as definitive surgery, and that careful attention should be paid to asepsis, skin handling, hemostasis, and wound closure. The skin incision should be placed in such a manner so as not to compromise the subsequent surgery. He went ahead and suggested that if the surgeon of the institution is not prepared to perform the accurate diagnostic studies or proceed with definitive treatment for these patients, the patient should better be referred to the treating center prior to biopsy. So it is very clear that biopsy should be done in the institute where he is going to receive the final treatment. So this is something which we all should understand and accept, because even today we see that our general orthopedic colleagues are very, very inclined to take a biopsy, and they call us and tell us that, hey, sir, biopsy to lena hai, chota sa procedure hai, kar dete hain. It is not that simple, because biopsy is most important step in the management of bone and soft tissue tumors. The fourth question, from where to take the biopsy? Why are we talking about biopsy tract? Why it is so important to exactly plan your biopsy? Because biopsy tract is a zone of contamination. It is a tissue which has come in contact with the disease, and that is why we have to treat that as a part of disease. And bone sarcomas are shown to recur locally from the tumor seeding along the biopsy tract. Biopsy tract and the immediately surrounding tissue has to be removed and blocked with the tumor at the time of resection. And there is the literature which says that the local recurrence rates increase 5-fold from 7% to 38% when a biopsy scar is not removed at the final surgery, or I would just reframe this, when an open biopsy scar is not removed at the final surgery. So these are some certain examples of very poorly performed biopsies. As you can see, a curvilinear scar with large hatch marks, multiple scars, there are 2 areas of contamination rather than 1 area. This is a horizontal scar in the popliteal fossa. Now this patient, I cannot do a salvage surgery here. We have to do an amputation. This is a biopsy which is done through the rectus muscle with a large anterior hatch marks. This is a patient who had undergone a open biopsy from the rectus and attempted arthroscopic biopsy. Now you don't want to contaminate your joint. This is absolutely, I would say, maybe a blunt, but I would say this is criminal, because when you do this, you are seriously jeopardizing patients' safety, and that is where these are unacceptable errors that has been made. These are when sometimes just to take out the biopsy tract, we've had to do free flaps. Now this is how can you justify subjecting the patient to such a major surgery just because of error in a diagnostic procedure? So anybody who wants to do a biopsy, it is imperative for them to go through this paper, which is freely available on internet, which talks about the areas from where you should take a biopsy in a way that it will not complicate or jeopardize the limb preservation surgery. So for proximal femur, it is through the vastus lateralis muscle. It is exactly the incision which you take for DHS fixation. All the biopsy tracts are designed to go through the muscle and not through any tissue planes. Like, you don't want to contaminate a tissue plane, because tissue plane is an area where there is a potential space. So if you go through that area, the hematoma can traverse or percolate through that tissue planes. Going through a muscle gives you an advantage of tamponade. So as soon as you take out your needle, the muscle will wrap up that hole. It will not allow further tumor tissue to come out. So for the proximal femur, it is through the lateral side. For entire shaft of femur, it is always lateral through the lateralis. For distal femur, which is the commonest site, it is either anteromedial or anterolateral or medial or lateral. It is never anterior through the rectus. So that limb preservation surgery for a distal femur resection, the incision is either anteromedial or anterolateral. It is never the standard TKR incision like the one in the front. So that has to be very clearly understood that it is either anteromedial or anterolateral. Similarly, for upper tibia, it is either anteromedial or anterolateral. For entire shaft of tibia, it is anterior to the shin. For the distal tibia, it is again anteromedial or anterolateral. For fibula, it is lateral throughout. For humerus, in the proximal humerus, it is in the front through the deltoid muscle, anterior fibers of the deltoid. It is never through the deltopectoral interval. So that we have to be very careful. For the shaft of humerus, it is again mostly anterolateral. In the distal humerus, it is lateral or medial. For radius and ulna, it is exactly the incision that you take for radius ulna plating. You know, it is just along the axis of the radius or ulna. Just like this. For scapula, it is along an imaginary line which is drawn from tip of the acromion to the inferior angle of the scapula. And for pelvis, it is along this utilitarian line. As you can see, it's a triflanged incision usually, which runs along the iliac crest, from the posterior superior iliac crest to the anterior superior iliac crest, and then it runs along the inguinal ligament. So this is the utilitarian incision along which you should take a biopsy, and most of the times the pelvic biopsies are done under CT scan guidance. So this is very important. The location of biopsy is absolutely vital, because if the biopsy track is somewhere else and your incision is somewhere else, we even today, despite bombarding young people every now and then about it is important from where to take a biopsy, people are still taking biopsy from wherever they want and wish. Even if you send this patient for CT guided biopsy to your intervention colleague, you better mark your incision, make a telephonic communication with him and tell him that you have to go along along this line which I have drawn. Inform the patient also that the biopsy should be taken from this line that I have drawn. The fifth and important question is how to do the biopsy. Basically, the question here is whether we should go for open biopsy or a needle biopsy. So what are the advantages of open biopsy? You get more tissue. Basically, open biopsy, you get more tissue. That is why it is easier for pathologist who is not that much experienced. The grading of the tumor may be more accurate. You want to know whether it's a low grade tumor, it's a high grade tumor, it's a dedifferentiated tumor. And if you want to do further studies like electro microscopy or immunohistochemistry or cytogenetic studies, which is nowadays required for most of the patients, then you have extra sample for those things. But it is more invasive. It causes significant local contamination. It's a large incision, long incision, and the tissue underneath the incision is also contaminated. So the skin loss during the definitive surgery is more, and sometimes it can lead to wound closure problems. It's an operation theater procedure, always requires anesthesia and hospitalization. The cost is higher. It is not repeatable, and the recovery time is longer, because many of these patients will go on to receive chemotherapy immediately once the diagnosis is made. And the medical oncologists have concerns of wound healing. They said, oh, once the wound heals, only then we'll start the chemotherapy. So sometimes it takes almost 7 to 10 days before they can start the chemotherapy. So this is a patient who has undergone a distal femur resection, who had an open biopsy. You can see how much tissue their patient, this is a huge, this much of amount of tissue this patient will lose. And that is where typically it can cause a lot of issues with wound closure. If you talk about needle biopsy, it's a very simple procedure with very little tissue contamination. It's only a stitch of surgical scar which is easily excisable. Image guidance options like CM guidance, CT guidance are available. It's an OPD procedure. I always do it under general anesthesia. I never do it under local anesthesia. I always do it under GA, but I don't keep the patient indoor. I just send them home after 2 hours. It's a short procedure, it is repeatable, and the cost is much lower. The way we do the CT guide, we do the needle biopsy, we always get adequate tissue samples for which is adequate for whatever further studies you want to do, electron microscopy, cytogenetic studies, IHCs. So we are very strong proponents of core needle biopsies. We nowadays don't do open biopsies. Open biopsies should not be done and completely discouraged. Having said that, it is very important to know the principles of needle biopsies and method to do a needle biopsy. Unless you do 10, 15, 20 needle biopsies, you will not get confident about getting good samples. But once you do so many biopsies, you'll be very confident in telling anyone that, oh, I will do needle biopsy and I'll get you a good sample. And there is enough evidence in the literature which has validated the yield and accuracy rates or effectiveness of needle biopsies. A multiple paper which talks about more than 95% yield and adequacy and accuracy rate of the needle biopsies. Okay. And this is the needle that we use. It is known as Jamshidi needle. Now needle has 3 components. There is an outer cannula, there is an inner trocar, and there is a stellate. Okay. So I'll show you. So this is the second generation. This is the first generation, which is autoclavable. This is the second generation that we use, which is supposed to be disposable. We sometimes ETO sterilize it and reuse it. So let us see a small video of how to do a core needle biopsy. So you have 2 types of lesion. One is this kind of sclerotic or mixed lytic sclerotic lesion. That is where you have to take out the cores from the tissue sample, the tissue from the bone. So what are those? This is a suspected case of osteosarcoma, very densely sclerotic lesion. All you need is this. You mark the proposed incision for future limb preservation surgery, infiltrated local anesthesia, put up that stab incision. You are loading your needle with the trocar. The trocar tip will help you penetrate the cortex. Once you know that you have penetrated the cortex, you remove the trocar, and this needle is pushed in with a screwing type of movement. Okay, so this is a screwing type of movement. It will advance in one direction. You can keep checking under your CM in what direction it is going. Then you take it out with the help of stellate. You can take out this core. Now you can move your needle in multiple directions, in 2 or 3 different directions, and take out this kind of cores. So this is what you get. So this is enough for your pathologist to make a good diagnosis. But then there are lesions like this, which are lytic lesions. So in that, you don't have any hard material within the tumor. The matrix is very soft. And that is where you have to do a core needle aspiration biopsy. So what is a core needle aspiration biopsy? This is a suspected case of giant cell tumor, which is what we're talking about. What you do is you take your 20 cc syringe and you heparinize that syringe. You have heparinized the syringe, you have heparinized the needle, you have heparinized the saline. You put the needle inside that lesion, apply that heparinized syringe to the needle, apply a negative suction, do many to and fro movements in multiple directions, and then this much of tissue you can get. We'll see this video once more. It was a pretty fast video. So this is heparin. Heparin has been taken in the syringe, and the Jamshidi needle, the saline has been heparinized. You put that needle inside the lesion, apply that heparinized syringe, apply a negative suction, and do this kind of to and fro movement. The aspirate is emptied in that heparinized saline and then filtered, and the sediment is your material. So much of material you usually get. For soft tissue tumors, you have another type of guns, which are known as soft tissue guns, and you have this kind of a true cut needle which goes in this spring loaded gun. So this is a soft tissue tumor in the thigh. What you do is, you have put in a stab incision, and this is that true cut needle which is loaded now, and then it is put inside that spring loaded gun. It is properly fitted there. You lock the gun, you load the gun, and you should go up to the, this is where you get the, so you have advanced it till the capsule of the tumor. And how will you know whether you have advanced or not? It will give you a resistance, and then you fire the needle by pressing this button here, and inside that gun you will, and inside that needle you will get this kind of a core. So you have to do it 3-4 times and take out different cores from different areas of the tumor. If you have to do an open biopsy, this is just for the purpose of completing the list. I have just shot a video of open biopsy. So how do you do an open biopsy? You put a bone deep needle, bone deep incision. You know, you don't raise flaps, where the incision should directly hit the bone. Okay. Then expose the bone, make a drill hole, put your scoops inside it, take out the sample. This sample will be sent for histopathology. Okay. And don't forget to block that hole with the help of either the bone cement or bone bags, because you don't want the hematoma to come out. So what happens if you don't block that hole? You know, you have this kind of poor hemostasis, and this entire area is now contaminated area. And when you do a surgery, you have to remove this much of skin. When you are putting a prosthesis inside, it is impossible to close this, and you will end up doing a big plastic surgery. You have these kind of big hatch marks that should also be avoided. So these kind of big open biopsy should be avoided. Now, you know, this is one very poor example, you know, where the incision was taken in the axilla, the horizontal incision in the axilla, and you can see the drains have been kept out from a very weird location, because the drain sites are also a zone of contamination. So when we are removing the tumor underneath, we have to take out this much of skin, and that patient will end up in a very bad, you know, in this particular area there are very few options of plastic surgery as well. This is another patient, you know, who had a recurrent tumor. The original incision was here, but the surgeon took 2 more incisions, you know, to do the biopsy. So now there are, rather than only one area of contamination, now we have 3 areas of contamination. This patient had to undergo an amputation because we didn't have any means of closing this bigger skin defect. Another very common practice but very poor practice is to divide the tissue sample and send it to 2 different laboratories. You know, it is very common that, you know, the surgeon will tell you that, okay, half the tissue you send to A laboratory, half the sample you send to B laboratory. Now that's a very bad practice. Why? Because these tumors are heterogeneous. You know, one tumor will have areas which are high grade areas, some areas which are low grade areas, some areas which are necrotic, which may not have any tumor cell in it. Some areas might be just simple reactive area. So one pathologist will tell you there is no tumor, another pathologist will tell you there is a high-grade sarcoma, and whom to believe. You know, so the good thing is that you send all these samples, the entire sample, to one lab, retrieve the slides and blocks, and send it to 100 other labs if you want 100 other opinions. But do not split the sample. Is there any role of excision biopsy? Well, there is a role of excision biopsy, but it's very strict criteria. The lesion should be small, very superficial, homogeneous. It should be a solitary lesion. That means it should be a only lesion in the body. It should be in the limb girdle and not on the trunk. And it should be a primary tumor, like something like this, you know, a small superficial, very well defined and homogeneous lesion. But when you are doing an excision biopsy, you have to remove it as if you are resecting a sarcoma with wide margins. Okay, you don't want to go again inside. Coming to the biopsy failures. So even after, you know, taking all the care, you still can get biopsy failures. And there are 2 types of biopsy failure. One is your tissue that you got is non-representative. That means the material does not have any tumor cells. And second is inaccurate biopsy. That means your biopsy diagnosis says that it is giant cell tumor. When you operate and the final histopathology, you curate that lesion, the final histopathology say, oh, it's a giant cell rich osteosarcoma. So that is known as inaccurate biopsy. So as I said, biopsy or these non-representative biopsies are mostly because of wrong targeting. That means your needle has gone to other place and not inside the tumor. The common cause of failure is you not used a guidance. So nowadays I use almost in every patient, I use CM or CT guidance, and I always use general anesthesia because you don't want your patient to move, because no matter how much amount of local anesthesia will not prevent pain when you enter the bone. So it is important to do all the biopsies under general anesthesia. Sometimes when we do the biopsy of the spine or deep-seated lesions, we do CT guided biopsy. So this is a small video of CT guided biopsy. There is a lesion in L5, suspected case of metastasis. So what you do, you take the patient under CT scan guidance. You do a primary scan, which will show you the lesion. As you can see the lesion here. Now you decide your trajectory and the level from where you will go. So this is the level where you will go from, and this is the trajectory that you are going to use. Put that patient in the exact, so this is the scano. You put your guide wire exactly at that area. You confirm with your CT scan that your guide wire is in that area. On that guide wire, you put your Jamshedi needle inside and advance it in the lesion. Again, do the scan and confirm that the lesion has gone inside. And then again, with a hyperinized syringe, you can do a to and fro movement and get this kind of a material. Even CT scan guided biopsies are very, very safe and effective. The other reason of biopsy failure is when your tumor tissue, you don't get proper tumor tissue. There are certain tumors where it is difficult to get good amount of tissue because there is no much matrix inside the lesion itself. Like the cystic lesion, simple bone cyst, aneurysm bone cyst, usually there is only fluid inside that lesion and your needle might not get any tissue. So when you are doing biopsy of cystic lesion, your aim should be to scratch these walls with the tip of the Jamshedi needle, dislodge some linings and then aspirate it with the syringe so that you get this tissue walls. Fibrous lesions are also very difficult to get the yield because they are, you see there is a big lesion, you are inside the lesion, but your needle is not able to take out the core because the tissue itself is fibrous. It's like a rubbery tissue, and that is where you don't get that inside your needle. And that is where you have to have a very good quality new needle, and you have to have this core needle aspiration biopsy technique where you do a vigorous to and fro movements and try to dislodge some fibrous tissue and then suck it out. These are the areas where I will not be giving second thought if I have to do an open biopsy. So in fibrous lesions, I am okay doing open biopsies also. If, as I said, if you are targeting a necrotic area, your biopsy is going to be negative. And as I said, there are in a tumor, there are low grade areas, there are high grade areas, and that is where you can have a histopathological diagnosis of low grade sarcoma on biopsy, but on final histopathology, it might tell you that it's a high grade sarcoma, which is pretty common. There are areas of dedifferentiation. So if you have not done your preoperative imaging well, you might not have targeted this area, and then your first diagnosis will say it's a parastral osteosarcoma. But when you do a final resection, they will tell you that, oh, there is a dedifferentiated component. But in today's era, with the help of MRI and CT scan, most of the times we know that this is a dedifferentiated sarcoma. So to minimize the failure, diagnosis should be strongly suspected prior to biopsy, and biopsy should merely confirm the suspicion. So now let us put the things in perspective. This is an old man. There is a clearly malignant lesion in the proximal humerus, very large, very wide zone of transition and the lytic sclerotic lesion. On MRI, this is a very classical cartilaginous sequence. As you can see, all these cartilaginous areas you are seeing. So your suspicion is that of a chondrosarcoma. So I know that I am looking at a chondrosarcoma. So that information I will provide to my pathologist. I will say that, okay, it's a 60-year-old male. There is a lesion. Radiologically, I feel it's a malignant tumor. And my first differential is a chondrosarcoma. And I'm doing a needle biopsy. And when the biopsy diagnosis confirms that this is a chondrosarcoma grade 2, the jigsaw puzzle is complete. So all the pieces of jigsaw puzzle are in its place, and now we are seeing a picture. So when all the pieces match, you see a nice picture. If the pieces don't match, you have to take a second opinion, or you have to do a repeat biopsy. It's like, I always tell my patients that, okay, I'm seeing a dog, and my friend tells me it's a dog, I'm going to believe it. But if I'm seeing a lion and my friend tells me that it's a dog, I'm not going to believe him. So it's like that, you know, you should know what you're looking at by your clinical and radiological pictures, and then your biopsy should just confirm what you are thinking. So biopsy is the most important step in the workup of musculoskeletal neoplasia. Before the biopsy, you have to think, and after reading the biopsy report, you have to think again. So there is a very nice and famous quote in Love and Bailey about PR examination. If you don't put your finger in the rectum, you might end up putting your foot in it. I believe all of us know about this. So this is, you know, extrapolated to this thing. If you don't needle your patient first, you might end up screwing him. It's the same kind of thing. It's a very vital thing to do. Because of failed trauma surgery, what will happen? At the most, you will have a non-union or a malunion. A failed arthroscopy, you can rectify with maybe a knee replacement. A failed knee replacement, you can do a fusion. But think about a failed oncosurgery. You know, this patient, most of these patients will die. So we should not do harm to our patients. That is the Hippocratic oath that all of us have taken. Biopsy is very important, and I'm glad that we had kept this lecture for the benefit of postgraduates. Thank you very much. We can take questions now.
Yes, any resident want to ask question to sir, please proceed. Anybody?
Yes, yes. Hello, sir.
Yes, tell me. Hello.
Sir, for the biopsy, why do we hyperinize this series? What's the, rationale behind it?
Yes. So this series, most of these tumors are very vascular. So this,
Okay, sir.
along with the tumor cells, there is a lot of blood in it. So if you just aspirate it, the moment it comes out of the body, it's going to clot, and all your tissues is going to entangle within the clot. Your pathologist might not be able to find that tissue. What heparin does is it doesn't allow the blood to clot, and that is where you have nice sediment in form of tumor tissue, as I showed in the video. So when your entire, not only the saline, the entire thing has to be heparinized. Your syringe has to be heparinized, your Jamshid needle has to be heparinized, and your 20 cc syringe has to be heparinized. So your tissue in the blood will not get entangled.
Okay, sir. Okay. Sir, my second question is,
Yes.
While doing the biopsy,
Yes.
should we do it at the margin of the tumor so that we can have the normal tissue as well as the tumorous one to help the pathologist to differentiate between the two?
Not really, not really. See, from your MRI, you know where is the most representative area. So you want to avoid the area of necrosis. So most of the times the area of necrosis is in the center, and the tumors have most actively dividing cells in the periphery. Most of these sarcomas have most actively dividing cells in the periphery. So you really don't need to take the normal muscle or normal tissue for your pathologist. All you need to go is you have to go first inside the tumor and then only make your either fire your needle or aspirate. Okay, you don't really need any normal tissue for musculoskeletal neoplasia. What you are talking is correct for something like a marginal ulcer, you know, where you have squamous, you are suspecting a squamous cell carcinoma in a pre-existing burns patient, or in a pre-existing long-standing chronic osteomyelitis sinus. That is where what happens. Even around the neoplasia, there are areas of metaplasia. You know, there is an area of carcinoma, and around it there is a area of metaplasia, and then there is an area of normalcy. So that is where you have to take a punch, or you have to take a complete bite, or triangular bite, wherein you take the tumor tissue, the metaplastic tissue, and the normal tissue. That is where it is important for the pathologist to give you a grade, whether it's a well differentiated, moderately differentiated, or poorly differentiated carcinoma. So there it is correct, not in sarcomas.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, anybody else? Okay, Mandit sir?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your time and efforts on
Pleasure. Always a pleasure.
We are obliged, sir, for such a good lecture.
Anytime. Right.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir जी कैसे हैं आप?
Pachore sir? One second, sir. 1 second.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, yes, sir.
Yes. When you have the pathological fracture, where do you do the biopsy?
Pathological fracture, again, you have to get an MRI done and take the biopsy from the most representative area.
Mm-hmm.
Pathological fracture, what happens, there is also a hematoma along the tumor tissue.
Yeah.
But again, the MRI will tell you exactly from where you should target your biopsy from. But we usually go inside the medulla as well. Most of the times we intend to go inside in the medulla through the fracture end with the needle and take the tissue from there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mandir.
All right, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mandeep sir, thank you. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, sir. Bye. Bye.